Mike Florio, kind enough to join me here once again here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Mike?
Doing great, Rich. How are you, pal?
Better for talking to you. Let's start with, I guess, the Friday draft trades and all the intrigue that is now coming off of that. Did the 49ers just peg with the Dolphins at third overall, the guy who they want, and never knock on the door with the Jets? What can you tell me about all of their maneuverings at the top of the draft and who it might be for?
Well, it reminded me exactly of what the Jets did in 2018 when 6 weeks before the draft they moved from number 6 to number 3. They invested 3 second-round picks in that flip-flop they did with the Colts. And once you do that, once you lock into that spot, what you are telling the world is no matter who the first 2 picks are, we sufficiently love whoever would be left over. So if you've got 3 guys that you would gladly make your franchise quarterback, your guy for the next 10 or 15 years, a player for whom you eventually are giving up 3 first-round picks and a third-round pick, and let's not confuse that. All this talk in the current offseason about 3 first-round picks as a starting point for Deshaun Watson, 3 first-round picks offered for Russell Wilson. The 49ers will have given up 3 ones and a 3 to get this guy, whoever it is. And they presumably would be thrilled if Trevor Lawrence falls to 3. He won't. If Zach Wilson falls to 3, he likely won't. And then they've got a third guy, whether it's Mac Jones, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's Trey Lance. There's a quarterback that they're happy to take even after the Jaguars and the Jets have secured dibs on 1 and 2. And it's clearly a quarterback after the press conference yesterday with Coach Kyle Shanahan and GM John Lynch. It's clearly a quarterback. The question now is, who is it? And they got 30 days to continue to hold that close to their vest and enjoy the fact. And this is part of it too, Rich. They get to enjoy the fact for the next 30 days the 49ers and what they're going to do with the third overall pick is all anyone's going to talk about. It's free publicity for the brand for the next 30 days. just like with remember the Rams 2016? Jeff Fisher loved every second of having the first overall pick in the draft, and he wasn't telling anybody what we already knew. They were taking Jared Goff because he loved the fact that the Rams had the first overall pick in the draft for weeks before they had to actually call out a name.
Well, I mean, Justin Fields ran a 4.44 earlier today, Mike, and it just led me to take a pause on the Zach Wilson Broadway Zach or Zach's Fifth Avenue, as I saw on my Twitter feed earlier today. That usually things change and rumors fly and positions change. Do you think it's possible that the Jets do have some sort of intrigue at 2 overall, and that includes eventually keeping Sam Darnold, that they're so damn close to the vest on all of this? Mike?
Well, I think when Zach Wilson rolled right to left and threw that laser down the field on Friday at his pro day, that probably ended any debate or discussion about what the Jets, who have been trying and failing since Joe Namath to have a franchise quarterback, a true franchise quarterback, year in and year out, guy that's going to make you a contender. When you see that Mahomesian quality in a guy who's entering the NFL and you've earned the spot, you don't have to trade up. You're there.
Yes.
You're not giving up anything. This is the reward for being crap last year. This is great, falling right into their hands because the Jaguars are clearly taking Trevor Lawrence. I got a theory, Rich, and they make fun of me on the show. They call me Conspiracy Mike when I say this, but I got a theory that Urban Meyer, the Jaguars coach, specifically didn't go to the Zach Wilson Pro Day because he didn't want to have any doubts in his mind as he stood there and, as he says, likes to hear the ball come out of the guy's hands. He just didn't want to do it. He knows he's taking Lawrence, and he doesn't want to have to reconsider or reevaluate after he gets blown away by Zach Wilson. So I think it's definitely Wilson at 2. The question is, what does Kyle Shanahan have up his sleeve at number 3?
Well, what's your best guess? We're hearing, Daniel Jeremiah stopped me in my tracks when he came on yesterday, and he says that the general consensus is Mac Jones, and that's the guy who everyone was, in New England was targeting. Maybe Belichick could just sit in the middle of the first round and get Mac Jones, and that now seems like an official pipe dream. Certainly seeing Mac at his pro day today. What do you think about all that?
The thing I love about Mac Jones, and I don't know whether it's the equipment manager's fault at Alabama, he just doesn't look like a football player. He doesn't look like his pads fit. He looks like Andy Reid at the PPK competition, early 1970s, right? it's like Bobby Lane, Joe Cap throwback, but the guy can do it all. The guy's got the footwork. The guy's got the accuracy. The guy's got all the skills to run Kyle Shanahan's offense. And I'll defer to Chris Sims, who played at Texas with Kyle Shanahan, has known him for years. And even though Shanahan won't tell Sims anything because he's a big mouth and he'll blab it, Sims knows the way Shanahan thinks, and he knows what quarterbacks are suited to plug right in to the Shanahan offense and operate it the way that Shanahan wants it to be operated. That's the big thing with Shanahan. I remember 2011, after the lockout ended, and there was question who the quarterback was going to be in Washington when the contenders were like John Beck and Rex Grossman. Grossman said, I know how to win this job. All I have to do is do exactly what Shanahan wants me to do. That's what he looks for. He's basically the kid with the joystick on the sideline with the quarterback doing exactly what Shanahan wants. He's devised plays that will work against the defenses that he knows are coming, and you will win if you can just deliver it the way that he wants. And Sims believes, as do others apparently, that Mac Jones is the guy who fits that criteria for Kyle Shanahan.
So if the Jets are taking that offense with them with Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur, why don't they take Mac Jones? Since you want to have Broadway Joe's successor finally be, why not have it somebody from the same school? Why not that?
Well, that's a good point, and I think if that would happen, Kyle Shanahan would be thrilled to have Zach Wilson still on the board, because I think Wilson is all that stuff, plus the cross-body throw with 1 foot on the ground, no feet on the ground, all arm. Forget about the obsession over mechanics. This is a guy who's got that shortstop quality that Mahomes has, funny body motion, any arm position, he can deliver the ball. So it's everything that Mac Jones has plus a little bit more. Not that it's a huge gap,
sure,
but it's enough of a gap that my guess is Shanahan would love it if there's some sort of a Jedi mind trick going on here and the Jets end up deciding that Mac Jones is their right pick.
And Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. I don't know which is my favorite soundbite from Kyle Shanahan's press conference on Monday. Him just being so honest about, keeping Jimmy G, but if people want to come and make the team better in so many different ways, of course they'll listen. But, free agency, if they gotten a new quarterback in free agency, that's a different story than drafting a rookie. You don't want to be in a position of needing the rookie to do well when you've got a veteran that the whole locker room loves. I mean, it was so refreshing to hear that honesty. And then being, asked about the attributes of a quarterback that he might choose and trying to extrapolate it to his love of Kirk Cousins, that answer was phenomenal. And honesty, and then also bristling at Cousins being his prototypical quarterback in the mind's eye of the media, and then building Cousins back up by the end of a conversation where he realized he was towing the line of tampering. That was phenomenal. I'm wondering what you thought of that.
Well, Rich,
Mike.
The reason why Patrick Mahomes was never considered to be the pick for the 49ers at number 2 or number 3 once they traded down with the Bears in 2017 is because Kyle Shanahan believed that at the end of the 2017 season, Kirk Cousins would become a free agent, as he did. Washington was not going to tag him a third time. It would have been $34 million, which 3 years ago was a ridiculous amount. It still is a lot to pay for a quarterback for 1 year, but they weren't going to pay that to Cousins. So Shanahan was going to sign him. So he didn't evaluate Mahomes, didn't evaluate Deshaun Watson, didn't evaluate any of the quarterbacks because he thought he was getting Cousins, and then the trade for Jimmy Garoppolo goes down during the 2017 season, and that short-circuits Cousins. So Cousins, I've had on Shanahan's radar screen. I thought that maybe this year. Now I think the Vikings had to keep Cousins around because if they try to move to a new quarterback, that potentially could set that team back and get everybody fired. But, yeah, there's been a sense that Shanahan wants a Cousins, and that Cousins in the right system, when you don't expect him to do too much, when you just expect him to do the play that's called. And I had a head coach explain this to me. Kirk Cousins can run the play that's called. He can't run the play that isn't called, which the Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murrays of the world can do, run away from pressure and make something happen on an impromptu basis. But Cousins can run the play that's called. And in Shanahan's offense, that's all you need, a guy who consistently and effectively and accurately can run the play that's called and deliver the ball. And with Shanahan, often enough, you're going to move the ball and you're going to score points. And I think that's what he sees in Mac Jones. And Nick Saban explained Mac Jones' attributes yesterday, and it almost sounded like he's saying, this guy's just a game manager, but that's a good thing. If you have an offense that works, all you need is a game manager. You need someone to manage that offense. And if it's Shanahan's offense and it works, that's how you win football games and put yourself in championship positions.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. Jenny Vrentis' article in Sports Illustrated speaking to a massage therapist under a pseudonym from Houston, talking about Deshaun Watson and his behavior in her massage room, and Watson's, and the fact that she isn't part of this Tony Busby group of accusers. For the first time, really made me pause, and it was very. And I'm not saying that I don't believe others accusers, and that's obviously the razor's edge of this conversation here. But it really was bizarre, and you can't sit here and say she's looking for money. You can't sit here and say that she's making it up with a lawyer who started this whole thing on his Instagram account. What do you think about all of this?
Well, I agree with you completely. The fact that this is somebody who actually rejected the overtures of Busby's firm and decided not to be represented by Busby and is evaluating her rights with another lawyer in Houston. And frankly, when you look at everything she said, there isn't that bright line, obvious grounds for liability that some of the lawsuits that have been filed, most of the lawsuits that have been filed, if the allegations in the lawsuits are proven, there is liability on the part of Deshaun Watson. So it does give credibility just to the broader picture that's been painted by 19 lawsuits and now a 20th person who hasn't sued and may not sue. You know, Rich, if it's just 2 or 3 people and you can show that one of them, as Watson's camp apparently believes, was trying to extort, that there was consensual conduct, whatever the case may be, if there's just 2 or 3 and you can blow a giant hole in one of the claims, that's one thing. You get up to 19 or 20, okay, one of the claims may have a flaw. You can't account for the rest. And I think that's the problem Deshaun Watson faces at this point, Rich. And the sooner, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand me when I say this, because I think he needs to have a reckoning. He needs to make this right. He needs to make it right with all the individuals involved. I have been arguing for a week now there needs to be a mediation session where everyone comes together. You get a retired judge who's got the gravitas to make everyone feel like they're getting a day in court and work directly with every plaintiff and Deshaun Watson to bring satisfaction, closure, a sense of justice without a 2-year process. That's the best outcome for Deshaun Watson. I just don't know that he can manage that because at the core of it all for the plaintiffs is Tony Busby, and no matter how much he says it's not about money, it is about money. And the problem now is, as Watson's waking up, Rich, to the reality that it's in his interest to resolve these cases now, from the perspective of a skilled and experienced lawyer who is in it for money, there's a premium if you want to do it now. And I think that's the challenge, trying to come up with a way to get all these people in the same room, get this resolved, and remove from it the Busby factor where he's going to recognize, I've got this guy on the ropes, so the price of every settlement goes way up.
So what does the league do under these circumstances, Mike? Because, again, you know, the Sports Illustrated story, the woman who told her story to Sports Illustrated said Watson never touched her and never threatened her, and his behavior, as it was described, is nothing short of shocking. Obviously, there are 2 other, or at least 2 other accusers who do say that he did force himself on them. Put them all together, and, you know, how do you decide? Is the league going to wind up having to decide whose story is believable and who isn't, and what to do with Deshaun Watson on this subject matter, or would a settlement make any sort of discipline from the league moot? What happens here?
Well, if the simple question is, what does the league do? And I don't mean this to sound like a smart-ass response, but the league will do whatever the league wants to do because it has the discretion, it has the ability under the various policies to fashion whichever outcome it thinks is best given these facts. And the entire personal conduct policy is driven by PR. 99.99% of all employers in America don't have something like this that regulates the private lives of employees. If you can show up for work, you got a job. If you're incarcerated and can't show up for work, you don't have a job. Anything else, that's between you and the civil courts, the criminal courts, whatever the case may be, for the most part. The NFL and the NFLPA have agreed to make this part of the existence of an NFL player because it does affect how all players and teams in the league are viewed, and the union's on board with it. And the league has the power to do whatever it wants. Now, I look at some precedent, and let me give you a couple of examples. Tyreek Hill a couple of years ago, when there were some troubling allegations in the confines of the off-season program happening, they struck a deal for him to just stay home. And then by the time training camp rolled around, he had gotten whatever clearance he needed to get from the criminal system that it was okay to move forward. Ben Roethlisberger, 2010. No arrests. There was one civil suit that was filed against him in 2009. There was an incident in 2010. Nothing ever happened from the perspective of arrests, charges, verdicts, but the commissioner still said there's enough here for me to be troubled. And that's where I think this is, Rich. There's enough there for the commissioner to be troubled. The question becomes, at what point does the league say, we have to take action? We have to put you on the commissioner exempt list. Or if it all would get settled right now, and this is why I mentioned Roethlisberger, if it all would get settled right now, if they'd have a mediation tomorrow and all 19 plaintiffs come out of that room believing they got justice and it's over and they're satisfied, there's still enough there based on Roethlisberger's case that the league could say, Deshaun, this requires an intervention. That's the word that Goodell used with Roethlisberger. We need to take a closer look at this. There needs to be discipline. There needs to be action. There needs to be involvement. And there's already enough then. This all ends today. There's already enough for the commissioner to suspend Deshaun Watson if he chooses to do so.
All in the middle of Watson saying he wants out. All in the middle of all of this, where we spent weeks talking about his trade value and his worth and how he's done playing for the Texans. This just seems to be putting everything on a totally different plane on that front, Mike. That's just the way I feel. I'm wondering if that's the reality of it.
We can't be traded. After the first lawsuit was filed, the general manager said to me, how can anyone trade for him now? And I said, well, it's just one lawsuit. No one's investigated it. Everyone's got security resources at their disposal. They can figure this out. They can look into it. They can get, by the time the draft rolls around, to a point where they understand it. But then when it becomes 2 and 5 and 7 and 11 and 15 and 19, you can't trade him. And the ultimate irony here would be, and I never know whether I'm using that word right thanks to Alanis Morissette, but the ultimate irony would be that Deshaun Watson said, no way in hell am I ever playing for the Texans, and he wants out. And it could be the only way he gets paid this year, a football salary, is to stay with the Texans and be put on the commissioner exempt list, not play, but still get his checks. And at some point, the Texans have to ask themselves, do we just cut the cord and save the $10 million? It all depends upon how bad it gets. And we're still too early to know how bad it's going to get, and there may not be enough time between now and training camp for it to get to the point where it would be that bad. But it's unprecedented from the perspective of I can't recall a situation like this that any player has ever had to deal with. And it looks like there's no simple exit at this point for Deshaun Watson.
Mike, what do you got for later on PFT PM and tomorrow?
Well, Peter King is joining me today for PFT PM, and there is a conference call with the commissioner and others at 3:30 Eastern. So whatever they say, we will be summarizing, reacting to. Obviously, we all expect a 17-game season to be official and various details related to that, plus whatever else they're doing today as the owners get together. So we'll have that all covered coming up later at 5 o'clock.
And then, of course, tomorrow on Pro Football Talk and all the other shows here on NBC Sports on Peacock, whatever rule changes might be down the pike. And we'll talk about that. Appreciate the time as always, Mike.
Great talking to you, Rich.
That's Mike Florio.